So it's funny, like I was actually sitting right here, idly flicking through my phone, and there's an email there from a mate that I've known in China for a couple of years. And I open it up and there's this picture of about 130 switchbacks. And in the background there is just wall-to-wall Himalaya. And in the middle is this big pointy thing, which I immediately recognized as the north face of Everest. And it was just like a two-line email, basically just said, hey mate, I've just taken this photo, I'm up at Everest base camp. They've paved the road here, and I think we should do an Everesting, what do you reckon? The concept of Everesting is really simple. Basically, you take any hill, anywhere in the world.
Just cycling up Everest.
No big deal.
No big deal.
And you ride repeats of it until you climb the equivalent height of Mount Everest. The essence of Everesting is really to take on a challenge that you couldn't just go out and do the following weekend. It was designed in such a way that it was something that you had to train for, you had to build up to. Once we decided that we were going to Tibet, we knew we needed someone to ride with us.
I'm a bit of a worrier and overthinker. I've never done an Everesting before. I've never ridden over 220 kilometres or ridden time the saddle over 8 hours. Everest Base Camp is 5,200 metres. So if you're based in Melbourne, thinking 5 kilometres above the city.
The more research that we did, we found out that there was no such thing as endurance cycling at high altitude that we could find. There's no benchmark, no one that had done this sort of thing before. So the first step was talking to as many people as we could. We spoke to mountaineers, we spoke to performance coaches, we spoke to breathing respiration coaches, and eventually the piece of advice that we got was to get ourselves into an altitude chamber and try to simulate the same lack of oxygen that we'd experience at high altitude.
I was really nervous about what the altitude would be like, but at the end of the day, you can't really worry about what you can't control. But yeah, I was definitely nervous. It was really exciting to finally get to the day of leaving. We flew out of Melbourne, went to Sydney, and it was a good meditative period for me to get my head around where we were going and what we're doing.
We're flying into Lhasa, which is at 3,900 metres. We're about to get our first experience and our first taste of what it was like to be at altitude. We'd obviously simulated it, but we had no idea how accurate the simulation was going to be. I think it's fair to say we're all a little bit anxious about what this was going to be like.
So Lhasa's the biggest city in Tibet, and it actually blew my mind. It ended up being one of my favourite parts of the trip. It was just this stunning city, and we just cruised around on our bikes, and I felt safer there than I do here in Australia.
So the first couple of days in Lhasa were really set up for us to acclimatise, and it was a fairly short trip that we were going on. So we'd talked to marathon runners who had done marathon events up in the area, and they would spend up to 3 months acclimatising. We had 2 days. So with that in the back of our mind, it was always a little bit interesting when you're doing any sort of activity, even just setting up the bikes, for example, you could really notice the effect of altitude.
How many pumps before a rest, Tills?
I'm going to lay down in a sec.
I'm laughing now, but I'm lying down before I actually pump up my tyres. That is awesome. And recovery.
So it was a little bit concerning when our videographer Mal started to get really struck down with the effects of being at altitude.
Okay, so we're just doing a bit of an update on the Mal situation, if we can call it that. So,
Look, he's down and out. He's out for the count at the moment. He got a bit of a cold on the plane, and the altitude's just tenfolded
it is
a little
ripped
bit.
him apart.
It is tearing shreds off him.
We're picking the spiciest curries we can possibly find, because it'll just make him feel so much better. It's just
I
gonna
love
lift
it.
him.
Just really clean him out. He
Clear
just
the
needs a good
sinuses.
cleanse.
Oh, he'll be cleansed.
Yeah.
So Mal, that was obviously a little bit of a rougher night than you've probably had before. Can you talk us through what you went through?
Well, a couple days before coming to Tibet, I was trying to shake a cold, and then when we finally got to altitude in Lhasa, it just made things so much worse, and I think I had a combination of altitude sickness and normal sickness, and it was not fun.
And then what about the oxygen as well? We saw some bottled oxygen in the room. Did you have to
I did not.
You didn't have to go to the oxygen?
Thankfully, no. That was when I thought things might be getting serious, when Lehman brought out the canister of oxygen.
I think for all of us, things got pretty serious when we saw that oxygen come out. So you look like you're on the mend a little bit, which is good.
Yeah, I feel better, but we're about to go. Tomorrow we're going from 3,900 meters up to 5,000 over some pass, and then back down to about 4. So if shit's gonna hit the fan, it's gonna happen tomorrow.
The first day after Lhasa, when we were starting our adventure to Everest, we were going to be doing a pass which was 20 kilometres, and that was really going to be a baptism of fire.
So we're climbing from about 4,000 metres to over 5,000 metres. We were climbing through beautiful switchbacks, looking over the fields straight away. We were gaining some pretty significant altitude. And it was probably about 3 or 4 kilometres into the ride where Shannon and Matilda just started to pull ahead slightly. And it got to the point where I was really slipping off the back. Whenever I increased my effort a little bit, my heart rate would exponentially increase. My breathing, I just couldn't quite get on top of it. So it was probably at the point of being uncomfortable. And I'm watching them thinking they're looking a lot more comfortable in the climb than I was. We continued climbing, and it got to the point where I was probably a couple of 100 meters behind them, and I just needed to be in my own little space.
Like, I'm struggling to even hold like 8 k's an hour. I feel just cooked, so cooked.
You don't want to stop?
Yeah, I do want to stop, but if I do, I won't start again.
But I kept on pressing on, and it got to the point with about 1 kilometre to go that I thought I'd reward myself and stop by the side of the road.
Well, I just honestly can't keep on going for the moment. Like, arms, legs, feet, pressure points is just, it's hard.
So I pulled over, had a little bit of a rest, recorded a quick little video, and as I was doing that, I lost it. I was overcome with emotion. We'd been training for this event for months. I'd put a huge amount of effort into this, and here I was on the first pass, and I was going backwards.
I'm so worried about the next couple of days. I'm so worried about
Everesting, I can't even stop thinking about it this whole time, and it boosts anxiety levels to the extreme. This is so tough. Like, I've been on rides that I've bitten off more than I can chew, like, a lot of times, but this is just, it's just a whole nother element.
I pulled myself together and crawled to the top of the climb, which was a great feeling. But the first thing I had to do was jump into the van and check my oxygen saturation levels.
You do not want to win this competition.
Under duress at altitude, it shouldn't really dip below 80%. This is the amount of oxygen that's in your blood. My reading at that point was down in the low 60s.
Could be why I'm feeling a little shaky right now.
It's quite dire, so I just slowed everything down and just shut my eyes, put on some jazz music and focused on breathing for 10 minutes. Was able to get my saturation levels back up, I was able to get my pulse back down, and just like that, I was back on top of things. I felt amazing. And I was able to actually take in the view for once, rather than this hazy thing that I'd seen when I first rocked up. So I quickly pulled myself together, and the great thing about a pass is it means a stinking descent on the other side. So following this amazing descent, we had a long commute in the bus, about 100 k's or so that we needed to knock off. So we jumped in the bus, and thank God Mal was back on top of things, and we all breathed a bit of a sigh of relief. And it was kind of at that point that we looked around and took a look at Tills, because Matilda had been climbing like she was at sea level.
I loved that initial climb. I felt very comfortable. The heart rate wasn't very high. I was pretty confident that I'd beaten altitude. I thought, piece of piss, I got this.
But then on the bus, it appeared that she was starting to get a few travel sickness symptoms. So it appeared that Tills had been struck down by altitude sickness as well.
Altitude, it's non-discriminatory. It gets anyone and everyone. Having been so sick, if I got sick again, I was nervous that my trip could be over.
So the next couple of days were really about just further acclimatization. The riding in Tibet is absolutely incredible. Wherever you were, regardless of whether you were riding through an abandoned village on the side of a lake, or whether you were going through a multi-switched back descent, everywhere you went, in the background was this incredible backdrop of the Himalaya. You would go from everything from the more modern cities through to what felt like Wild West towns, where we'd ride through and every single person in that town would turn around. As you can imagine, foreign tourists aren't that common in these towns, let alone a couple of dudes in Lycra. So after a couple of days of just acclimatizing and getting used to riding in Tibet, we just crested one of the world's top 10 highest roads, jumped on our bikes and had a 40k descent. Now the absolute highlight of that, after heading through a couple of small villages, was rounding a corner, and for the first time, Mount Everest was revealed.
Right behind me there is Mount Everest. It's so overwhelming to think. This whole journey, the 6 months of planning that went into that, but not only that, the years of thinking about this place, and to see it in person, it's hard to explain just how magical it is.
So this was the point where I sent you that email. in, I think it was the end of May. I came past here and saw Everest, and I was again overwhelmed with emotion. And I got my phone out, sent you an email, and said, Andy, you got to come here. You got to ride it. We got to try to Everest this thing.
I can't stop looking over my shoulder.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It's incredible. It's really overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. And the thing is that we're going to get close. We're going to get really close, and we're going to do something special there as well. And it's this kind of this whole thing is this fear of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen around the next corner. We don't know what's going to happen when we get there and try to do this attempt. And that's the kind of quite an exciting thing.
That's the adventure that we love, though, as well, right?
It's all about that adventure.
I've done a couple of Everestings now, and the anticipation is the big killer.
How are we feeling?
Pretty good, I think. I just want to get started. How about you?
About to vomit on myself.
Just all you want to do with an Everesting is just get on the road and start riding.
I just want to start. I want to see Everest.
Breakfast had been this long drawn out ordeal. The guys were taking forever to get ready, and I was just itching to get out on that hill. Meanwhile, the sun was just going up and up and up, and we were losing daylight fast. So it was only a few minutes after the van had pulled up to where would be our base camp for the ride that I was out there before anyone else. I just had to start riding, so I just took off.
Oh, it's nice in the sun.
You started without telling me.
Sorry.
When we got there, we were welcomed with the most unbelievable day. It was completely clear, and here we are doing laps with Mount Everest right in front of us.
After all this build-up, after all the months of thinking about this and unpacking it mentally in my head, it was just such sweet relief to be riding my bike.
Felt really good throughout the day and was enjoying it. Started to get into a bit of a routine.
It's safe to say that relief lasted maybe a couple of minutes, because it was only a few minutes later that I was again like sucking in the big lungfuls of air and consciously thinking about how I could get on top of my breathing.
And just then I just had the same thing on that lap where a couple of times I had to kind of snap myself back into it, because not daydreaming, but I just felt disconnected from physically what's going on.
It is quite a selfish thing. You need to be concentrating on yourself, and I wasn't aware too much of what was happening around me, but I was seeing that Andy was dropping off a little bit and had gone into the bus a few times and wasn't sort of, you could tell he was really nervous.
Really, this number here needs to be above 80. If it's below 70, you just, I don't know, like, it's just a matter of time. And then, 60, that's why I'm feeling like I'm a bit drunk on the bike, because I'm just not getting enough oxygen. I think, like, if I'm honest, I'd say that's probably my Everesting done, but I'm okay with that. Yeah. Keep on riding. So sorry. It's fine. Go for a bike ride. Keep on riding. How are you feeling?
I'm a bit tired. I have no idea how it was for him, but for me, I was pretty sad to not see that through with him. All right.
Let's keep on riding.
So we rode from about 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That night.
We're going to have something to eat. We're at the Rombach Monastery. Right there is Everest out the window. This is the best cafe view in the world, I think. I've been dreaming about stopping here for the last 4 hours.
I felt good, but I felt tired. I felt a bit over it already. Really nervous about the night time because I'd never ridden at night before, and let alone as many hours on the bike that we were about to go into, and I was very, very nervous about the cold. So we started, and it actually was okay for a while. It was getting really cold during the night, but I was coping okay. It was enormously challenging for me because it goes against everything I love about riding. I wasn't surrounded by any of my mates. I couldn't see anything, and I'm just out there by myself at times. And then I was with Shannon, and we went into the bus and started having some caffeine and trying to get warm a little bit as well. And then when we came back out, I don't think the break helped him. He never recovered after that break, where I felt quite good. So he stopped. And this was at about 2:30 a.m. and then I was just out there by myself, and it started to get colder and colder. It was so frustrating. Things were just annoying me where I just couldn't, I had, 2 pairs of gloves on and I couldn't really do much with them. It was difficult to drink. I couldn't get any of my nutrition out without having to take my gloves off, and I started to get really cold. I was starting to shake quite a lot, which was affecting the bike and my handling skills. It was then that I knew we weren't going to do it. Throughout all of my racing and my training, it has never had anything really to do with winning or what others thought. It's always been, for me, finding out just how far I can go. And there's no greater test than what we did. Failing together was better than failing alone.
It was certainly disappointing that none of the 3 of us could pull off this Everesting, but what we were left with was an incredible adventure. We really saw ourselves as being fortunate to be able to ride our bikes in such a stunning location. In terms of unfinished business, I don't know how accustomed Tills is to failure.
No one gave us any percentage of hope of ever completing it, but I'd certainly wouldn't mind going back and trying to prove them wrong.